Did you know that in some countries, arpists can face the death penalty? From Bangladesh to Saudi Arabia, we're about to explore how different nations punish this serious crime. Are these harsh measures effective or do they miss the mark? Let's find out. In 2020, Bangladesh made headlines by approving capital punishment for arpists. This decision came after a shocking surge in 6 crimes, with nearly 1,000 reported incidents in just 9 months. It's a stark example of how some countries are taking extreme measures to address this issue. But is the death penalty the answer? As we journey around the world, we'll examine how different legal systems tackle RAPE. From life imprisonment to rehabilitation programs, the approaches vary dramatically. We'll look at the reasoning behind these punishments and their effectiveness in combating 6UL violence. Understanding these laws is crucial in the global fight against 6UL crimes and the push for gender equality. So join us as we uncover the complexities of RAPE punishment across cultures and consider what truly works in preventing these heinous acts. Capital punishment, the ultimate deterrent? Our journey through RAPE laws takes an unexpected turn as we encounter countries willing to execute offenders. This stark contrast in punishment raises a crucial question. Can the threat of death truly prevent 6UL violence, or does it create a new set of problems? In recent years, several nations have implemented or allowed the death penalty for RAPE, reflecting a growing trend towards extreme measures in addressing 6UAL crimes. Bangladesh made headlines in 2020 when it approved capital punishment for RPISTs, responding to a surge in reported incidents. Similarly, India passed an executive order in 2018 permitting the death penalty for those who are ape girls under 12 years old, driven by nationwide outrage over high-profile cases. Pakistan's legal system also allows for capital punishment in cases of gang ape, with Prime Minister Imran Khan calling for even harsher measures like chemical castration or public execution. These severe approaches often stem from public anger and cultural beliefs about justice, particularly in the wake of shocking crimes that capture national attention. In the Middle East, countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates have long-standing laws that include death as a possible punishment for RAPE under their interpretations of Islamic law. Saudi Arabia carried out 8 executions for RAPE in 2019, while Iran executed 12 individuals for the same crime. The UAE's laws are particularly strict, with the death penalty applicable for coerced 6, especially if the victim is under 14 years old. China, too, maintains capital punishment as an option for RAPE cases where the victim dies or is severely injured, or when the crime involves multiple victims or occurs in public. These laws reflect a belief that the most severe punishment will serve as the ultimate deterrent against 6UL violence. But does the death penalty actually prevent RAPE? This question has sparked intense debate among experts and human rights organizations. While some argue that the threat of execution might discourage potential offenders, others point out that there's little evidence to support this claim. In fact, the effectiveness of capital punishment as a deterrent for any crime remains a contentious issue in criminology and legal studies. Critics of applying the death penalty to RAPE cases raise several concerns. First, there's the universal issue of potential wrongful convictions. Given the irreversible nature of execution, even a single mistake could result in an innocent person losing their life. This risk is particularly worrying in cases of 6UL assault, where evidence can sometimes be limited or circumstantial. Human rights organizations also argue that the death penalty, regardless of the crime, violates the fundamental right to life and amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. They suggest that focusing on severe punishments might divert attention and resources from more effective strategies for preventing 6UL violence, such as education, improved law enforcement, and support for survivors. Moreover, some experts worry that the threat of execution could potentially lead to unintended consequences. For instance, it might discourage victims from reporting crimes committed by family members or acquaintances, fearing that their report could lead to someone's death. In societies where honor and family reputation play significant roles, this could further complicate an already challenging situation for survivors. Another point of contention is whether such extreme punishments address the root causes of 6UL violence. Critics argue that rape is often a symptom of deeper societal issues, including gender inequality, poverty, and cultural attitudes towards women. They suggest that resources might be better spent addressing these underlying factors, rather than focusing solely on punishment after the fact. Alternative approaches. From life, imprisonment, to rehabilitation. While some nations opt for execution, others take a radically different approach. What if the key to reducing 6UL violence isn't harsher punishment, but a complete rethinking of how we handle offenders? Some countries believe they've found a better way. Welcome to Europe, where many nations have chosen a path that might surprise you. Instead of the death penalty, these countries often opt for long-term imprisonment or even life sentences for rape offenders. But it's not just about locking people away. There's a deeper philosophy at work here, one that focuses on rehabilitation and the potential for offenders to be reintegrated into society. Take the United Kingdom, for example. Their approach to defining rape is quite unique. Instead of focusing solely on the use of force, UK law emphasizes the concept of consent. This broader understanding allows for a more nuanced approach to 6UAL violence cases, recognizing that not all situations fit into a simple black and white narrative. But it's not just about how rape is defined. Many European countries have developed comprehensive rehabilitation programs for offenders. These programs aim to address the root causes of 6UL violence, teaching empathy, respect, and healthy relationship skills. The idea is that by changing an offender's mindset and behavior, we can prevent future crimes and create a safer society for everyone. Now, you might be wondering, does this softer approach actually work? Well, the numbers are quite interesting. Countries that focus on rehabilitation often experience lower recidivism rates compared to those with harsher penalties. This suggests that there might be real benefits to reformative justice approaches. Of course, not everyone agrees with this method. Some argue that it's too lenient and doesn't provide justice for victims. This debate has led to some countries exploring alternative punishments that fall somewhere between execution and rehabilitation. One controversial example is chemical castration, a proposal that's gained traction in countries like Pakistan. This method involves using drugs to reduce an offender's libido and 6UL function. Proponents argue that it could prevent repeat offenses, but critics raise serious concerns about human rights and the ethics of such a practice. The debate around these alternative punishments highlights a crucial point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to addressing rape. Each approach comes with its own set of challenges and ethical considerations. For instance, while chemical castration might seem like a deterrent, there's limited evidence of its long-term effectiveness. Moreover, it raises questions about bodily autonomy and the role of the state in administering such treatments. Interestingly, the effectiveness of any punishment approach seems to be closely tied to societal attitudes towards rape. Countries that emphasize rehabilitation often foster a more supportive environment for victims. This can lead to higher reporting rates and better support systems, which in turn can contribute to prevention efforts. It's important to note that these alternative approaches don't mean letting offenders off the hook. Long-term imprisonment and life sentences are still severe punishments. The key difference is in the underlying philosophy. Is the goal purely punitive, or should there be an element of reform? This question becomes even more complex when we consider the impact on victims and communities. While harsh punishments might satisfy a desire for retribution, they don't necessarily help victims heal or prevent future crimes. On the other hand, rehabilitation-focused approaches aim to address the root causes of 6UL violence, potentially creating safer communities in the long run. Beyond punishment, addressing root causes. While punishment remains a crucial aspect of addressing RAPE, some countries are taking a radically different approach. They're shifting their focus from what happens after a crime to preventing it from occurring in the first place. What if the solution to 6UAL violence has been hiding in plain sight all along? Welcome to a world where education, awareness, and cultural change are at the forefront of combating 6UAL violence. This approach recognizes that punishment alone may not be enough to create lasting change. Instead, these countries are investing in strategies that address the root causes of RAPE and 6UAL assault. One of the most significant steps in this direction is the implementation of consent-based legislation. Surprisingly, only 8 out of 31 European countries have such laws in place. This means that in many nations, the legal definition of RAPE still requires proof of physical force or threats, rather than focusing on whether consent was given. This gap in legislation can leave many victims without adequate protection and justice. Countries like Sweden, the UK, and Germany are leading the way with consent-based laws. These legal frameworks shift the focus from the victim's actions to the behavior of the accused, asking whether they took reasonable steps to ensure consent. This change in perspective can have a profound impact on how society views and addresses 6UAL violence. But laws alone aren't enough. Many experts argue that education is the key to preventing 6UL violence. Comprehensive 6 education programs that emphasize consent, respect, and healthy relationships are being implemented in schools across various countries. These programs aim to shape attitudes and behaviors from a young age, creating a culture where 6UL violence is less likely to occur. Public awareness campaigns also play a crucial role in changing societal attitudes towards gender and sexuality. These initiatives can take many forms, from social media campaigns to community workshops. They work on challenging harmful stereotypes, promoting equality, and encouraging bystander intervention when potential 6UL violence is observed. Technology is also emerging as a powerful tool in both preventing and prosecuting RAPE cases. Some countries are developing apps that make it easier for victims to report incidents and seek help. These digital tools can provide a safe, anonymous way for survivors to come forward, potentially increasing reporting rates and helping authorities identify patterns of behavior. DNA databases are another technological advancement being used in the fight against 6UAL violence. By maintaining comprehensive genetic records, law enforcement agencies can more easily identify repeat offenders and solve cold cases. While this raises some privacy concerns, proponents argue that the benefits in terms of prevention and justice outweigh the potential drawbacks. It's important to note that these prevention-focused approaches don't replace punishment entirely. Rather, they work alongside appropriate legal consequences to create a more comprehensive strategy for addressing 6UL violence. The goal is to create a society where RAPE is less likely to occur in the first place, while still ensuring justice for victims when it does happen. This holistic approach recognizes that 6UAL violence is often rooted in deeper societal issues, such as gender inequality, poverty, and cultural attitudes towards women. By addressing these underlying factors, countries hope to create lasting change that goes beyond the impact of punitive measures alone. Of course, implementing these strategies isn't without challenges. Changing deeply ingrained cultural attitudes takes time and persistence. There's also the question of resources. Comprehensive education programs and awareness campaigns require significant investment. However, proponents argue that the long-term benefits in terms of reduced crime rates and healthier societies make these efforts worthwhile. The path forward, balancing justice and prevention. As we've seen, countries around the world take vastly different approaches to punishing rape, from capital punishment to rehabilitation programs. These legal responses are deeply influenced by cultural attitudes and public sentiment. In turn, these laws shape how societies view and address 6UL violence. The effectiveness of severe punishments like the death penalty remains controversial. While they may satisfy a desire for retribution, there's little evidence they effectively deter 6UL violence. Alternative approaches focusing on rehabilitation and addressing root causes show promise in reducing recidivism rates. Ultimately, the global challenge of combating 6UL violence requires a multifaceted approach. Balancing justice for victims with efforts to prevent future crimes is complex. As one expert notes, the definition of consent helps emphasize the autonomy of the individual when it comes to making choices about sex. This highlights the importance of legislative frameworks that prioritize consent over coercion.